Welcome to the deep dive. When we talk about countries being rich, it's easy to just think, well, piles of money.
Right.
But what does that actually mean on a global scale, and how does it affect, everyone?
Yeah, it's more complicated than just a single number.
Exactly. And you, our listener, have probably wondered about this stuff, the vast world of economics. So today, we're right there with you, diving deep into the top 5 wealthiest nations based on some pretty interesting recent data.
We are indeed.
Mhm.
And to get a clearer picture, we're going to unpack an article called Exploring the Richest Countries. A look at the top 5-10 most today. It came out January 15th, 2023 on 10mosttoday.com.
Okay.
Gives us a really good snapshot of who's leading the economic pack right now.
So our mission for this deep dive is, well, to go beyond just the rankings. We want to really understand what makes these economic powerhouses tick.
Mhm.
We'll look at their total economic output, that's the gross domestic product, GDP, and then zoom in a bit on GDP per capita. That gives us more of a sense of the average economic well-being for people living there.
Right, the individual slice of the pie, so to speak.
Yeah. And plus, we'll explore the main industries that are like the real engines driving their economies.
And it's worth remembering, as we look at these big numbers and sectors, that we're getting a high-level view. The actual experience on the ground within these countries can be incredibly varied.
Oh, absolutely. Which kind of brings us to a question for you listening. Have you ever stopped to think about what it really means for a country to be rich? In a way that actually benefits the lives of its people.
It's a good question.
Let's kick things off by looking at the country that, well, consistently tops the list for overall wealth, the United States.
Yeah, the article we're using confirms it. The United States stands as the wealthiest country in the world by total measure.
Mhm.
The sheer size is pretty staggering. A total GDP of around $20.5 trillion.
$20.5 trillion.
Wow.
And when you break that massive number down, to the individual level, the GDP per capita.
Right, so per person, the GDP per capita of the U.S. comes out to approximately $62,794. That gives a picture of the average income generated per person, roughly.
Okay, so what's actually fueling this economic giant? The article points to 3 key areas, right?
That's right. The service sector is really the dominant player. It contributes a massive 79% to the U.S. economy.
79%.
Yeah. And service sector.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really broad term.
True.
It covers all those intangible things we use daily: healthcare, finance, insurance, retail shops,
Okay.
and professional services too, like
Yeah.
legal advice or accounting, all that stuff.
That is a huge slice of the pie. Then, okay, next is manufacturing.
Yep, manufacturing accounts for around 12%. That's where you picture, factories making physical goods.
Right.
And then making up about 9% is the technology sector. So that's everything from software and internet services to advanced R&D.
It's fascinating how interconnected they all are, though.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Tech needs manufacturing for hardware, and both rely on tons of services like logistics and marketing just to reach people. The scale of each bit within the U.S. economy is just enormous.
Now, the article does bring up a really crucial point about all this wealth in the U.S. It's not spread out evenly.
Yeah, that's a critical piece of the puzzle here. While the overall output is huge and the GDP per capita is high, the article does highlight significant differences.
Mm-hmm.
Income, wealth distribution.
Mm-hmm.
Some individuals, some households hold a much, much larger share of the economic benefits than others. And that's a pattern we'll probably see, maybe in different ways, as we look at other top economies too.
Definitely something important for you, the listener, to consider. Think about how these huge sectors in the U.S. touch your own life.
Yeah.
Whether it's the healthcare you use, the bank, the shops, maybe even where you work, these numbers represent a powerful engine with really far-reaching impacts. Okay, let's journey east now. Second richest country on the list, China.
Yes, China. Their economic growth over the last few decades has been, well, truly remarkable.
Unbelievable, yeah.
The article pegs it as second richest globally. Very substantial total GDP, $14.2 trillion.
Okay, $14.2 trillion. But then when we look at GDP per capita, the picture shifts quite a lot compared to the U.S., doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The article cites a figure around $10,222. That's using 2018 data from the World Bank, mind you.
10,000 versus 62,000, that's a huge difference.
It is, and it really underlines the impact of population size,
Right.
China's total economic output is immense, second only to the U.S.
Right.
But divide that by its enormous population and the average income per person. considerably lower.
It's a great example of why you need both numbers, total GDP and GDP per capita.
Exactly, to really understand the situation.
So let's dig into what's driving the Chinese economy. The article points to a slightly different mix of sectors compared to the U.S.
That's right. Services have actually grown to become the largest part now, roughly 50%.
Okay, half.
Then industry, which is largely manufacturing, that's second at around 40%. And agriculture, it still plays a role, about 10%.
And it's interesting to see technology becoming more and more important for China, too.
Oh, definitely.
The article highlights tech as nearly 20% of all their exports now. That's really significant.
It absolutely is.
Mm.
China's made huge investments in tech advancement. They're a major global force now in things like telecom, AI, e-commerce.
Right.
This push towards high-value tech exports is really key to their growth strategy.
And just like the U.S., wealth distribution is a really important factor in China, maybe even more pronounced. The article talks about big regional disparities since the reforms back in '78.
That's a key point, yes.
Mhm.
Opening up the economy led to super rapid development in coastal regions, big cities like Shanghai.
Mhm.
Their GDP per capita figures are now comparable to some developed nations. But then you have many inland provinces like Guizhou, where progress has been much slower. So you get this considerable wealth gap across the country.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? The challenges of managing such a massive, diverse economy, and that stark contrast in GDP per capita between the U.S. and China, it highlights the different ways a nation can be seen as rich.
Precise.
Is it the total size of the pie or how it's shared?
Yeah, high total GDP means a large active economy, big output capability. But GDP per capita gives a much closer look at the average economic well-being of individual citizens. Okay, shall we move on to number 3? Japan.
Ah, Japan, yes. A country that often comes to mind when you think, tech innovation, high quality of life.
Definitely.
The article ranks Japan third richest. Total GDP, $5 trillion as of 2023.
And their GDP per capita is also quite notable. Comes in around $39,859, according to the article.
Okay, so significantly higher than China's per capita figure.
Oh, yes, in terms of average individual income.
So what are the main pillars holding up Japan's wealth? Again, three main sectors, but the proportions are a bit different from what we've seen.
Yes, services are dominant again, a substantial 70% of their GDP.
70%, okay.
That includes their really established banking and finance, big retail sector, advanced transport and communication systems, all that.
Right.
Manufacturing is also key, 25%. Known globally for high-quality cars, chemicals, electronics.
Of course.
And technology, while it's a smaller percentage, about 5%, still plays a crucial role, especially in things like robotics and AI.
That really fits with Japan's global image, doesn't it?
It does.
Innovation, high-precision manufacturing, those figures seem to back that up. For you listening, think about Japan's reputation in tech. Does this breakdown confirm what you thought, or maybe challenge it? You probably use Japanese products all the time.
Exactly. Japan's built a strong global brand around quality, reliability, tech advancement. These economic figures just reflect that long-term focus. Okay, let's shift focus now to Germany, another major European economic power, consistently up there among the world's wealthiest.
Germany, right, known for engineering a really robust industrial base. The article puts Germany as one of the wealthiest. Total GDP, $3.9 trillion, and a GDP per capita of $48,111. The article also notes they rank highly within Europe on that per capita measure.
Yeah, that high per capita income really emphasizes the strong level of prosperity for many in Germany. And similar to the other top economies, services play a big role, around 70% of their total output.
70% again. But industry in Germany, it still seems to hold a more prominent spot compared to some others we've looked at.
Absolutely. Industry, including that renowned manufacturing sector, contributes a strong 28% to Germany's GDP.
Okay, 28%.
That is a higher proportion compared to the U.S. or even Japan. It really underscores Germany's continued strength in making high-value manufactured goods that people want worldwide.
The article also lists out some subsectors in Germany's service economy. It's quite diverse.
It is indeed. Beyond the usual finance and retail, you see big contributions from real estate, various business services, transport, communication, healthcare, education, even public administration.
Wow.
That broad range points to a well-established, mature service economy that works alongside their industrial strength.
And the article makes a really interesting point about Germany's success being heavily reliant on exports.
That's crucial, a crucial element of the German model. They're famous for their export-oriented economy.
Right.
Meaning they produce a huge volume of high-quality machinery, cars, you name it, that gets sold internationally. This strong, positive trade balance is a major driver of their overall wealth and economic stability.
So Germany really stands out. Powerful mix. Strong manufacturing, thriving services, all geared towards global trade success. All right, let's round out our top 5. We're heading to a country known for rapid growth, immense future potential, India.
India presents a really interesting case study. The article accurately calls it one of the world's fastest growing major economies. That's definitely the trend. However, the GDP per capita figure mentioned, $2,170 as of 2018. That stands in stark contrast to the other countries in our top 5.
Wow, $2,170. That's a really significant difference, isn't it?
It is.
It really highlights that while the overall economy is expanding fast, the average individual income is still considerably lower than in the other giants we've discussed.
Exactly. It really drives home that distinction between total size and average well-being. India's massive population is, of course, a key factor there.
Right.
Now, looking at the sectors fueling India's growth, the article points to a fairly balanced picture.
Yeah, services are nearly 60% of GDP. That's substantial. Industry, including manufacturing, around 28%. And agriculture, still notable at 12%.
And it's interesting, agriculture's share of the economy is 12%, but its role in employment is even bigger, as the article points out.
Right. It mentions agriculture still employs the largest chunk of the population, around 50%.
It's half the workforce.
Though that number is gradually decreasing, as people move to cities for work.
Right, urbanization.
And the article also emphasizes wealth distribution in India, noting it's heavily skewed.
This is really critical for understanding the nuances there. The article highlights the top 10% hold a staggering 70% of all assets.
70%.
While the bottom 40% hold only 5%. And this inequality has actually increased since 2000. That's a significant trend.
That paints a really vivid picture, raises big questions about how the benefits of this rapid growth are being shared. Despite this, the article also points out some very positive developments. Expanding infrastructure, the fast-growing telecom sector.
Absolutely. Developing roads, railways, ports, airports, that's crucial for trade and connectivity in such a huge country.
Yeah.
And the rapid spread of internet access through telecom creates new opportunities for education, business, communication, even in more rural places.
And it seems India's strong growth potential, plus relatively lower labor costs, makes it increasingly attractive for foreign investors.
That's a key factor driving the expansion. Foreign direct investment is playing a bigger and bigger role in growing various sectors there.
So when we look at India, we see this dynamic, fast-growing economy, large workforce, improving infrastructure, but also significant challenges. Wealth distribution, that relatively low GDP per capita compared to the others.
Exactly.
It really underscores the diverse ways a nation can be a major player on the global economic stage.
It certainly does. Now, the article also touches on some FAQs, frequently asked questions, about the richest countries, which can help us tie some of this together.
Oh, good idea. Synthesize the info. First question is direct. Which country is no one rich country?
And the article reaffirms, based on total GDP, it's the United States. Currently holds that top spot, economy over $21 trillion. It notes this is more than double China's GDP, its closest rival, and highlights the U.S.'s high per capita income and large consumer market.
Okay. The article also asks, which country is the richest in 2023, acknowledging predictions are tough.
Yeah, crystal ball gazing is hard. But it lists the likely contenders, U.S., China, Japan, Germany, India, and the U.K.,
Right.
given their current strength, diverse industries. It also mentions Canada and Australia having potential, partly due to natural resources and trade.
Then why is the U.S. the richest country? The article points to several things.
A whole mix.
Strong economic system, access to resources, highly educated population, that large consumer market driving innovation, consistent investment in education and research leading to tech advances, and a stable political environment. Quite a list.
It is. Really emphasizes that national wealth builds on a complex mix of factors. Then it addresses which countries are richer than us, meaning richer than the U.S. per capita.
Ah, right. Important distinction.
Based on 2023 World Bank data, it lists places like Qatar, Luxembourg, Singapore, Ireland, Norway,
Okay.
Brunei, Switzerland, Netherlands, Austria, Denmark. It points out these nations all have significantly higher average incomes per person than the U.S.
Really reinforces our earlier point. High total GDP doesn't automatically mean highest individual wealth.
Exactly. A smaller country, maybe highly productive, often specialized, can definitely have a much higher GDP per capita.
Right. And finally, the article wraps up our top 5.
Yeah, concise summary. Reiterates the U.S.'s powerful economy, high wages, China's infrastructure focus, Japan's quality of life, healthcare, Germany's innovation and tech exports, and India's appeal for foreign investment and job creation potential.
Got it.
And it concludes by stressing the ongoing need in these wealthy nations and others to focus on improving access to resources, expanding economic opportunity for everyone, and working to reduce inequality for a more equitable global economy.
A really important point to keep in mind as we wrap up. So as we finish this deep dive into the top 5 richest countries, a few key comparisons really jump out, don't they?
They do.
We saw the sheer scale of the US and China with total GDP, but then that big difference in average well-being with GDP per capita.
Mm-hmm.
We saw very dominant sectors, strong services in the US and Japan, Germany's manufacturing prowess, India's changing mix, and crucially, wealth distribution, the inequality within these nations. That was a
Yeah.
recurring theme.
Yeah, what's really insightful is seeing that a nation's overall output doesn't always tell the full story for its people.
Right.
A huge GDP can mask big disparities. And we saw diverse factors driving wealth: resources, tech, skilled workers, global trade strategy.
So considering these different models of national wealth, what indicators do you think truly define a thriving society? And how might those indicators change as the global economy keeps shifting?
That's the big question, isn't it?
And as these top economies adapt to new challenges, new opportunities, what new trends, what impacts might we see for them and, well, for the rest of the world in the years ahead?
Food for thought.
Definitely the kind of questions that stick with us long after the numbers are done, and they certainly fuel our curiosity here at the Deep Dive. Thanks for exploring these fascinating topics with us.